All right, welcome back. Right here in the studio, it is time for the newspaper review and analysis. And like we said earlier, we have our guest in the studio, Dr. Theophilus Abba. He's the director of Daily Trust Foundation. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Happy New Month.
Happy New Month
and happy New Month to you also.
Thank God that we are alive.
Thank God. It's
Despite
very
of,
important.
the crisis in the country.
Exactly.
You see, every day you wake up, you have to say, God, I thank you.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let's begin with a Daily Trust newspaper. And we have the lead story here talking about the stock market. Despite global disruptions, Nigerian stock market rakes in 831 billion naira in 6 months. We have writers that talks about the stock market outperforming others in Africa. Second quarter recorded 40% rise in transaction value. How local investors shielded Nigeria. And just below the story, we have an infographic of, how the stock market has actually grown, in what time, and also in first and second quarter. Away from that story, at the top of the page, we have hundreds flee as bandits abduct 50, take over Kaduna communities on page 4. Many shut out as INEC ends voter registration. We also have more foreign airlines may cut flights, over $600 million blocked funds. Details on page 24. Moving on, outrage over killing of Nigerian in Italy. Federal government demands justice. The DSS arrests Boko Haram spy in Ogun State. You can find details of that story on page 6. And then flood kills 3-year-old, destroys 100 houses in Gombe State, and you can find details of that on page 37. Now let's come back to the studio and let's introduce Mr. Dr. Theophilus Abba. Now let's talk about a story that's actually on the front line of every newspaper and TV station today, talking about the INEC voter registration and many being shut out. What's your take on this, and what does this mean for Nigeria?
Okay, I think the first thing I want to point out is the fact that there was a last-minute rush by Nigerians, to register for the 2023 elections, and this may have been motivated by the fact that parties have completed their primary elections, especially at the presidential level. There is a lot of debate, a lot of interest in who becomes the president in 2023. And I see politicians mobilizing people to say, look, for you to actually be relevant, for you to choose the next president, you must be registered. So those who are sleeping, those who never thought, that registration, they should register for the election, maybe, awoken, to go and register. I think that's why there was that last minute rush. I'm also thinking that it is actually because INEC did not do what the law says. The act says that the voter registration should be continuous. And that means that in all the 773 local governments, all the wards in Nigeria, there should be, facilities for Nigerians to register to vote. And if you look at that, it's a whole lot, because if you talk about a ward should have no more than 500 persons. And we discovered that a typical ward in Nigeria will have up to 2,000, 3,000, even 5,000 persons. So the wards that we have, actually, they are not realistic. If you see the number of persons who have been coming out to register, I think as of 2019, INEC had about 80 million registered voters. It's a little above that, I don't know, it's 81 or so. Then between 2019 and now, I think INEC has registered no less than 10 million, or getting to 20 million Nigerians, So I'm expecting that in 2023 election, over 100 million persons may be voting. And that means that, you see, the registration, and a lot of people have not even registered, which means that a lot of Nigerians, have been left out. And if that happens, it means that they are being disenfranchised. They may not be able to vote in 2023 election.
But even if they're given more time, do you think, every Nigerian will be able to register?
Well, not every Nigerian. Those who are, between the age of 18 and above, is that not? From 18 and above, you are qualified to register. But if you are given enough time, not just time, but facilities. You see, if there are facilities in all the wards as required by law, it will be easier Now, in a world, you have 500 persons. Maybe if maybe 20 register in a day, in 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, the number that 500 were registered. But there are not enough facilities. Then there's problem of insecurity in several parts of Nigeria. You know, there are places in Nigeria now where you can't even register. For instance, if you go to Imo State, part of the southeast, you know, INEC went to conduct the registration in part of the southeast. I think that was around April or so. You know, they were attacked. I think one INEC personnel was killed, you know. And if you go to some places in Nigeria today, some part of Kaduna, some part of Zamfara, some part of Katsina, you know, you cannot conduct registration. And so, you see, everyone cannot be registered. So we are going to, I'm appealing to INEC that, look, after the 2023 election, let us do a continual voter registration indeed. Secondly, security agencies must, you know, I mean, try their best to ensure that all the places in Nigeria that people live, all localities, all rural areas that constitute war, that there should be security. I don't know, I'm just theorizing maybe, but I mean, if they put in effort, if government support the security agencies, there should be security in most parts of Nigeria for people to be able to register. But as it is today, not all Nigerians register. But to me, the important thing is people coming out to vote. I remember in 2019, we had over 80 million registered voters. But the number of people who voted, you know, was less than half that number.
I think it was around 30 million.
About 30 million persons voted. So, I mean, why should you queue up for hours, for days, from what we have heard, the reports, and then not register? I mean, not vote during the elections. So I'm thinking that politicians should mobilize Nigerians to vote, even those who have registered. Let them be mobilized to be able to vote. You know,
but Dr. Abba, what do you think is responsible for this last-minute rush, and generally also like the turnout for the continuous voter registration in the past few months? What do you think is responsible for that?
I thought, like I mentioned earlier, you see, after the primary elections, presidential candidates emerged. And these presidential candidates are encouraging Nigerians to register if they really want them, you know, to win election. Then there are also interests in the nature of the presidential candidates. You know, some parties candidates, I mean, some persons complain about some parties candidates. Some persons complain, are supporting some parties candidates. And this is actually determining the interest that people have in the 2023 election. And I think that is the major reason why people are rushing out to vote now.
There is a talk around, sorry to cut you, there's a talk around the new voters, that's the first-time voters. And we've seen some people, you know, some pundits say the outcome of the Osun election reflected the place of the first-time voters. How do you think that will affect the general election?
Well, when you talk about the first-time voters, maybe, I mean, the number of voters, you know, I mean, increased. But I didn't compare the figure of the election, I think, is it 2018 now with the one of 2022? I didn't compare the numbers, you know. But when you talk about first-time voters, you see, many of them are quite excited about, you know, coming out to vote. And I think the new voters will definitely increase the number of persons who will vote. I mean, the first time, those who are being registered to vote this time around, it will increase the number of Nigerians who will likely vote in 2023 because they'll be excited about voting. But then the important thing is that don't just have a voter's card. On the election, they come out to vote.
Yes.
All right, now let's talk about the lead story quickly. You know, saying despite global disruptions, Nigerian stock markets rakes in 831 billion naira in 6 months. What's your take on, you know, on this?
Well, the global disruption caused by the crisis in Ukraine,
and
I mean,
Russia.
the war, I don't call it the war, I say Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You know, so if you talk about the disruption now, talk about, you know, a lot of countries are having issues with energy, especially European countries, because they depend largely on Russia. Now, I mean, they have to look for energy somewhere. And the stock market depends on energy in the sense that, you see, manufacturing companies depend on gas, they depend on mainly gas to actually power their factories. and if they don't produce, you can imagine the output, and so the stock of some European, companies may go down because maybe the production is reduced or whatsoever. But in Nigeria, a lot of factors may be responsible for what is happening now. Interest in maybe new stocks. I know that the Dangote, I don't know whether Dangote is already on the stock. The Dangote
the petrochemical.
I don't know whether it's on the stock market already.
Now. But MTN,
MTN is already there on the stock market. People are actually buying MTN, and people are waiting for NNPC Limited, to come on board. So I think many Nigerians are becoming interested in what is happening in the stock market, buying shares. I know that Dangote shares are actually selling. I hope I'm not doing advertisement for Dangote. And a lot of people are buying Dangote shares. So it can, because if you look at the
I think market, from the infographics on the front page of Daily Trust, yes, they mentioned the top gainers, and the top gainer is oil and gas, which means there's more transaction on oil and gas stock. Then the next one is on goods, and then the other consumer. On industrial good, and then on consumer goods, and then of course losers are banking and then insurance. So people less traded in banking shares and those of insurance, but more of oil and gas, which took like 58% of the money went to oil and gas.
So because oil and gas, every Nigerian uses petrol. Many companies are using gas, especially the power sector, the electricity sector. They use a lot of gas, and so if you buy the shares of these companies, you will actually make a lot of money. So I think that is responsible, and I think the Nigerian stock market comes top because the economy of this country is bigger than the economy of any other African country. So we are expecting that it could be better, because we have a lot of potential in Nigeria. The agricultural potential is there. I don't think many agricultural companies are quoted on the stock market, but we have that potential. The oil and gas is another huge one, because we are thinking that even the gas sector, the gas deposits of Nigeria are not properly, explored. So I'm expecting that it's good news for us, that the stock market is doing well, but we are encouraging government to do whatsoever it can to encourage the manufacturing sector, because we see we are still a consumption nation. That imports a lot to consume. There's need for investment in the industrial sector, so that one, there could be jobs. Secondly, we could actually export. And that will also boost investment. Because as long as there are industrial sector where people can put funds and expect some gains, there will be a capital to run the system.
All right, just quickly before we move on to the next, paper, could you share your thoughts on, what's happening in the aviation sector, from local airlines, shutting down operations, and now we're seeing that, foreign airlines may cut flights, over $600 million blocked funds.
Well, it's very unfortunate because what's happening in that sector is as a result of the global crisis, fuel crisis. It's very unfortunate. I bought a ticket to travel to one part of Nigeria. In the past, if I had 60,000, I would get a return ticket. Now I had to pay over 100,000 to get a return ticket. And then, in spite of that, the aviation fuel, is scarce. And I think that is because even our refineries, are not working. If our refineries were working, at least we'd be sourcing aviation fuel locally. But now it has to be imported. And unfortunately, with the devaluation of the naira, to the dollar, especially at the parallel market, it makes a lot of things difficult. If you want to import anything, unfortunately, you need to go to the black market to source your forex. That is very unfortunate, because the CBN, cannot fund all the requests made by those who want to import even aviation fuel and other things. So it's quite unfortunate. Then the 600 is it million dollars?
$600 million.
Million dollars, you know, is a serious crisis because I don't think even a foreign reserve is so much.
No.
I don't think the foreign reserve is so much. So the NNPC, you know, needs to. I mean, the CBN need to discuss with these foreign allies. There has to be a way of renegotiating these funds. You know, if there are economic or monetary policy that will bring that can be, I mean, invoked in order to sort these differences in transaction, it has to be, because any airline that is being owed so much may not be able to operate. If Nigerians are paying for tickets in naira, because I know there was a time some airlines were saying no, they will no longer collect naira from Nigerians. If you want to buy a ticket to fly to any country, you must buy it in dollar, you must pay us in dollars. And it's actually because of, I mean, this inability to change the quantum of naira they have to dollars. If you want to change at the official rate, it is difficult. And if you have this naira to go to the stock, I mean the black market to change, you know, definitely you will not get, the value. You know, so it is a very difficult situation. But I think our CBN, I mean, we have experts there who should be able to sit down with these airlines and sort out this issue, because Nigerians need to travel. You know.
Okay, let's quickly go to the next newspaper. The next paper this morning is The Nation newspaper, which the main headline says, "Plan attack security on the alert in Lagos, Enugu. Bandits now in Osun forest. Fleeing terrorists regrouping in Nasarawa," says Sule. And then, of course, on top of the page, Nigeria, others plead with G20 for debt service extension. Story on page 2. And then 2023, we will back power shift to south, says PANDEF. And that is Pan Niger Delta Forum. And then Union criticizes government takeover of 5 discourse. Story on page 28. 18 feared killed in bandits vigilance group clash. Story on page 2. And then below the headline is a pictorial showing stranded prospective voters who were waiting to register at the INEC registration center in Lagos. Below that, report CBN won't devalue Naira. And then lastly, new NNPC states face cash crunch. It's a story that starts on the front page and continues on page 4. On the red strip just below at the very bottom of the page, youth Adebanjo not speaking for Afenifere, Yoruba leaders. Story on page 20. Dr. Abba, looking at these stories on the front page of The Nation today, so many issues. Of course, some of them we have touched on. But and this issue of cash crunch as a result of new NNPC, what do you think? Because some analysts are saying maybe the government didn't thought out this new NNPC modalities before inking the deal, because it appears that lack of money from the oil sector may affect revenue shareable to states.
Okay, if you look at what government has done, it is in line with the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA 2021. And the act, which was debated in the National Assembly, says the NNPC should become a profit-making organization. Now, when an act is signed into law, it has to be implemented. And the NNPC Act of 1977 does not envisage profit-making. It envisages NNPC as a regulator, NNPC as an outfit that represent government in its dealings with other international oil companies, IOCs. So, but now there are arguments that NNPC has been operating at a loss since 1977. Even the profit that was declared by NNPC maybe in 2021, was being disputed. Some persons were saying, look, if you revalue your assets and you begin to declare some amount as profit, you're actually fraudulent. So people did not even believe that NNPC made profit in 2021 when it was declared that it made profit. So the fact is that NNPC still belongs to government, in the sense that, you see, government is the shareholder. When we talk about federal government, it is actually all the state government with the federal government that own NNPC, and the Minister of Finance, you know, is like the one holding the shares on behalf of government and all this and all that. NNPC is supposed to make profit. NNPC is supposed to make profit. And so this profit will be accrue to government at the end of the day, which means that government will still benefit from whatever profit NNPC makes. Now, the transition, you know, to me was too sudden, in the sense that, you see, Nigerians or states have been used to the monthly allocations that they get from whatever came from NNPC sale of crude oil, you know. But we know that, you see, it's not only NNPC that contributes to that purse. There are other agencies of government that contribute to that purse. So I'm thinking that, one, states must, wake up. You see, internally generated revenue should be collected with transparency and accountability. And I'm saying this with emphasis. We have investigated and discovered that, you see, what states have declared as IGR is less than 10% of what the IGR in most states, you know, are less than 10%. And we've discovered that in many states, local government chairmen, they help themselves with what they generate. Internal revenue of many states, they help themselves. And all the, revenue generating agencies, they don't do proper, or they are not transparent in what they declare. So if you investigate properly, you discover that the people who are at the helm of affairs in the revenue generating agencies in states are living big. You know, they have a lot of money at their disposal. The money that should accrue to government is stolen by a few. And I think it is time for governments to wake up and say, look, we have to look critically at our IGR. You see, many people think that Nigerians don't generate too much, states don't generate too much. A lot of money generated at the state level, but stolen. And I think it is now time for state government to be realistic and say, look, gentlemen, you cannot keep this money to yourself. You know, so that is the first thing. And I'm feeling that if NNPC makes profit, it will be good for the country. Now, if industries, you know, if industries are encouraged in this country by way of helping them with maybe money to import raw materials to produce and to employ, they will pay tax. More tax can also bring about a lot of revenue to be shared among the three tiers of government. If there are so many countries that don't even have the oil deposits that we have, they don't sell crude oil, but from their industries, they are able to raise funds for the state. So I'm thinking that the NNPC, being a limited liability company and not contributing to FAC, has become a reality. We have to find a way around it.
All right, so let's move on to the next paper, which is the Punch newspaper. And the lead story is still on the voter registration. We have more stories at the top of the page. This says Nigeria needs a leader who can who can take tough decisions, says Oshomole. Still on NNPC, we have a story that says the NNPC remits $2.7 billion to CBN in 6 months. We also have, just beside the nameplates there, federal government failed to provide 100 billion naira electricity subsidy, says Discos. And then below the page, we have National Assembly proposes 63 universities experts kick. Wife of Nigerian killed in Italy demands justice. And terror, Lagos police Amotekun on alert, and federal government urges states to fund housing scheme. Now let's talk about, Lagos and other states, being on alert due to, the threat by terrorists. And even on Daily Sun, the lead story talks about how on insecurity and how ministers, senators, reps avoid states and seek refuge in Abuja, also saying, that they have abandoned flashy cars and are moving around in disguise. Let's hear your thoughts on this.
Okay, the stories about insecurity all over the country, quite unfortunate, because we have seen it again and again. This government came to power in order to deal with insecurity. So, but my concern is when you talk about police being red alert, the way it should be, that is what intelligence agencies are supposed to do, is if you have noticed that these guys are plotting, they are in some forest, instead of you telling us that they are in some forest, I thought it's good to move, to dislodge them,
Instead of waiting for them.
Instead of waiting for them, because I look at the example of Abuja, since 2019, they were kidnapping people in Abuja, in Kuje, in Gwagwalada, in Deide, you hear about kidnapping all over Abuja, not in the city center, and every day people will lament, we've been kidnapped, my brother has been kidnapped, my sister has been kidnapped. We know that I told that they are in the forest. But you see, I didn't see much move by government or by security agencies to deal with these kidnappers until we had that unfortunate incident where, soldiers of the brigade of guards, guards brigade, came under attack and 10 persons among them were killed. That was when government woke up and said, schools close. Because I'm feeling that Nigerians have been lamenting. In rural areas, we've been crying. These people are in our forests. We go to farm, they don't allow us to farm. We hide, they don't allow us to hide. There been this lamentation all over. It's not only in Lagos, not only in the southwest. People have been crying. And government ought to have moved. Security agents ought to have moved against them all this while. Instead of waiting for them to threaten maybe the city before we now talk about, red alert and all this and all that and all that. And giving us you see, I'm feeling that we need to do much more. We need to do much more. It's only, there are not many countries who will allow security to degenerate, even when they know that they are under threat. Not many countries. Many countries, when they know that there's security threat, they even move against the criminals before they launch attacks. But to me, what I see from the outside now is that we wait for the criminal to make move, then we defend. And most times, before we defend, a lot of damage must have been done. So I'm feeling that security agencies need to take proactive measures. If you have got intelligence report that these guys are in the forest in Ogun, in Lagos, in Oyo, in Ondo, and all those things, go and dislodge them. The forest belongs to Nigeria. The forest does not belong to insurgents, or to bandits or to terrorists. That is not. It doesn't belong. It belongs to Nigerians. And most times, you see, we discover that Nigerians have surrendered, their lives to security agencies. But these bandits and criminals who have weapons are allowed. Let me use the word now carelessly. To terrorize these Nigerians who have surrendered in their own, security to security agencies. So I am feeling that the best thing for security agencies to do is to move against them. Let's not wait for them, to attack and destroy before we now say, we are blocking them. We are trying to defend. We want to protect. At times, damage must have been done before security agencies move in and begin to. No, we shouldn't be so. It shouldn't be like the Kuje issue, where there was, intelligence reports, and then not much was done. Let me not say nothing. Not much was done until these terrorists did that, damage to the Nigerian integrity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Theophilus Abba, Director of Mid and Daily Trust Foundation, for these very incisive commentaries of some of the top stories for this morning. We hope to have you another time. We have to close, draw the curtain at this time.